Hello once again, this is Mr. Frederick, excited to teach you about heat transfer. Last time we talked about thermoregulation and how the body is able to keep its normal body temperature when it's hot and when it's cold. And different conditions where there are extremes when the body has to, when if you overheat or go too cold, it could lead us to death. So it's amazing how the body is able to regulate the temperature, right? But today we're going to talk about heat transfer, a continuation of that topic. So we're going to learn about 3 different ways to transfer heat, okay? And I'm showing this in a way that is both simple but real. So as you see here, the 3 different heat can transfer in 3 different ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. We're going to talk about each of them individually and how they're applied. The first stop is conduction. So conduction, as you see here, is basically the transfer of heat by direct contact, okay? And it occurs in liquids and in solids. As you see here in the top, you see a frying pan that is being heated, and when you leave it for a while, you're going to see that the heat transfer to the handle. There are frying pans, there's still frying pans today that are mostly metal. And I have one too. So when you heat one up, you feel the heat at the handle. And sometimes when you get it, it burns you. So what they have done today in this time is that they have made different designs of pots and pans where the handle is not completely metal, but a mixture of materials. So it could be metal on the inside, but wood on the outside, or plastic or ceramic, different materials, so that it doesn't conduct heat as well as metal would. So that's why you could be able to hold some pots and pans and still carry it around even though it's hot, because the type of handle that you have doesn't conduct heat as well. So in those cases, is a good factor to not have things conduct heat so that it doesn't burn you. But if you want to cook something or get energy generated, you would need something that could conduct heat really well. Okay. Here's another example where you're at the fire, at camps, at chimneys. Instead of putting your hand, which would be dangerous at the fire, you put a metal stick, a metal pole, to poke at the fire to move the logs around. But as you notice, the beginning part of the metal is starting to change color orange and is slowly conducting heat. If heat stays too long, this pole will eventually be all hot, and it will also burn your hand as well. So some people leave it in, and if you leave it in too long, that will happen. So what's recommended, if you have it, use it only when you need it, and then when you're done, put it away from the fire so that it could cool off. So when you needed to use it next time, you put it back in. That way it restarts the thermal process over and over again. Next stop is convection. Convection is basically the process with motion of a medium. So in this case, air. When hot materials flow into a cold material, it will heat the region and vice versa. So when you put your hand over a fire, or if you put your hand over a stove or a pot, you notice that the heat of the air comes going up. That is convection. It is moving through the air. It is moving through wind currents, air currents, up to the air. And that is really well how heat could be transferred in that way. You can also notice it that when you boil water, that the water inside is circulating, is moving. That is also currents as well. The heat from the fire is not directly touching the water, but is moving the water, not by conduction, but by convection. See? So you see the water moving. That is the process of convection, moving the water. Okay? And the third one, radiation. The transfer of heat via electromagnetic radiation. So you're near a fire, and you put your hand over it, and you feel the warmth from the fire, and you feel that heat radiating to you, keeping you warm. another thing is the sun. Even though we're not touching the sun directly, or the sun is in space, so it's not possible to give us air currents for the heat wave from there. But we still feel the heat through radiation, electromagnetic radiation, and we feel the heat of the sun just by being in the presence being in the sunlight. And being in the sunlight, we all seen and we all experience it feeling warm in our bodies. Okay? Now, just a review. The three mechanisms of heat transfer. Now, let's put them all together now. So we discussed the first one is conduction. So we see an example of a person poking the logs of fire with a metal pole. And the heat is transferred from the fire, into the pole directly. Then we talked about convection, where a person puts their hands and feels the heat wave rising from the fire to their hands or face, and you feel it directly coming up. And lastly, we talk about radiation, where you feel the presence, the heat radiating towards you. Okay? Because remember, heat travels from warmer areas to cooler areas, right? And it does that until it could get a thermal equilibrium. Right? Now, things to think about. How does energy move from one object to another? What will happen to the coffee as it continues to sit like this? And explain the movement of thermal energy in the picture below. And lastly, what I want you to do is to explain the three parts where convection, conduction, and radiation is occurring. Okay? This will be your assignment to do for next time. Okay? This is Mr. Frederick, keeping things real and keeping things simple. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.